The Silent Fleet. Admiral Chen Zhang stood at the viewing platform of Luna Base, her weathered hands clasped behind her back as she stared at the massive shape floating in the orbital dry dock. The U.S. Constitution, last of the Kennedy-class carriers, was a relic from the pre-digital age. All analog systems, physical controls, and mechanical redundancies. Most called it a museum piece. Some called it a waste of resources. Tonight, it might be humanity's last hope. Still admiring your fossil, Admiral? The voice belonged to diplomat Revan, the Arcturian representative who had arrived 3 months ago with news that would change human history forever. His crystalline form caught the Earthlight, sending prismatic patterns dancing across the observation deck. Every fossil has a story to tell, diplomat, Chen replied, not turning away from the window. Sometimes those stories are worth listening to. The Arcturian made a sound like tinkling glass, their species equivalent of a dismissive laugh. Your species clings to such primitive technologies. Our quantum mural ships would render this vessel obsolete before it could even power up its engines. Chen allowed herself a small smile. The Arcturians had arrived with their gleaming fleet of AI-driven warships, demanding Earth's immediate surrender and integration into their empire. Their ships were masterpieces of technology, self-repairing, self-learning, guided by artificial intelligences so advanced they made Earth's best computers look like pocket calculators. But that wasn't why they'd come. They detected something in Earth's orbit, something that terrified them enough to send their most powerful battle fleet halfway across the galaxy. The Omega signal. Nobody on Earth knew what it was or where it came from. The signal had appeared 6 months ago, broadcasting on frequencies that shouldn't exist, carrying data that defied analysis. The Arcturians claimed it heralded the arrival of something that had destroyed countless civilizations, something that targeted worlds with advanced digital technologies. Tell me, diplomat, Chen said, finally turning to face the crystalline being. If our technology is so primitive, why did your council agree to my proposal? Revan's crystalline form flickered, a sign of discomfort, a desperate measure for desperate times. Admiral, when the signal brings its horrors, perhaps your antique machines will serve as a distraction while our fleet handles the real threat. The admission had cost the Arcturians dearly. Their pride wouldn't allow them to openly acknowledge that humanity's primitive technology might have value. But the fear of the Omega signal had forced their hand. Lieutenant Harrison, Chen called out. A young officer stepped forward from his post near the door. Begin Operation Lazarus. Full crew recall, Priority Alpha. Mom, the Constitution hasn't been fully crewed in 15 years. Most of the officers qualify to run analog systems retired, teaching, working in museums. Chen nodded. Find them. All of them. We have 1 week to bring a dead ship back to life. Revan's crystalline form pulsed with confusion. 1 week. Admiral, our sensors indicate the signal source will arrive in 6 days, 14 hours, Chen finished. I know. That's why we're not going to waste time arguing about whether this will work. Lieutenant, execute recall orders. As Harrison hurried away, Chen turned back to the window. The Constitution's massive hull gleamed dully in the Earthlight. She'd served on ships like this one, back before AI navigation and quantum computers had made human crews obsolete. She remembered the feel of real steel under her feet, the sound of actual engines thundering through the hull, the sensation of piloting a vessel with your own hands instead of letting computers do the work. You truly believe this relic can make a difference? Revan asked, genuine curiosity creeping into his harmonic voice. Chen thought of the messages already going out across Earth, calling back veteran crews, retired engineers, old-school mechanics who knew how to fix machines with wrenches instead of software updates. She thought of the knowledge stored in human minds instead of computer banks, the skills passed down through generations of sailors and soldiers. Diplomat, she said softly, sometimes the oldest tools are the best ones. When your quantum computers fail and your AI systems crash, we'll still have steel and steam and human hands to guide us. That's not primitive. That's survival. The first recall responses were already coming in. Chen could see the data scrolling across a nearby screen. Former crew members, engineers, mechanics, all responding to the call. Many were past retirement age. Some hadn't set foot on a ship in decades. But they were coming. Because when humanity's back was against the wall, experience trumped technology. Wisdom overcame programming. And sometimes, just sometimes, the ancient ways proved to be the most effective of all. 1 week, Chen repeated, more to herself than to the diplomat. 1 week to remember who we used to be. And then we'll show the galaxy what humanity can do with nothing but steel, steam, and determination. Above them, in its orbital cradle, the Constitution waited silently. Soon, its decks would echo with footsteps again. Its engines would roar to life. And perhaps, just perhaps, an old warship and its human crew would prove that in the face of cosmic threats, sometimes the simplest solutions were the most powerful of all. Legacy of Steel. Chief Engineer Maria Santos wiped the sweat from her forehead, leaving a streak of grease across her weathered skin. At 62, she hadn't expected to find herself deep in a warship's engine room again, but here she was, surrounded by the ghosts of her past career. Try it now, she called up through the access shaft. The massive turbines of the U.S. Constitution groaned to life, their deep rumble spreading through the hull like a sleeping giant's awakening breath. For the first time in 15 years, the old girl's heart was beating again. Power readings holding steady at 40%. Came the response from above. That's double what the Arcturians said was possible. Maria allowed herself a grim smile. The alien observers had spent the past 3 days watching the recalled human crew with barely concealed disdain. Their crystalline forms would shimmer with what seemed like amusement as retired officers and engineers worked to resurrect the ancient warship's systems. They don't understand, she muttered, patting the solid steel housing of the nearest turbine. They think newer always means better. The ship's internal communication system crackled. Actual speakers and microphones, not the neural interfaces the aliens preferred. Engineering, this is the bridge. Admiral Chen requesting status update. Maria reached for the comm panel, its buttons worn smooth by decades of use. Chief Santos here. Main engines are responsive, Admiral. We've got enough power to maintain orbit and basic systems. Give us another day, we might even get weapons online. Excellent work, Chief. Our Arcturian friends are surprised by our progress. The subtle satisfaction in Chen's voice made Maria chuckle. The aliens had expected failure. Instead, they were witnessing something they couldn't quite comprehend, the power of human institutional knowledge, passed down through generations of engineers and mechanics. Captain on deck. The call echoed through the engine room as James Reeves, the Constitution's newly appointed commanding officer, descended the ladder into engineering. Though only in his 40s, Reeves had spent his early career on analog ships before the digital revolution. He understood what they were trying to achieve. Chief Santos. He nodded, taking in the organized chaos of the engine room. How are our old systems holding up? Better than expected, sir. These machines were built to last. No complex AI to fail, no quantum processors to glitch, just honest steel, steam, and hydraulics. Reeves ran his hand along a nearby control panel, his expression thoughtful. The Arcturians intercepted another burst from the Omega signal this morning. Their quantum ships, something's affecting their systems. Random failures, computational errors. They're scared. Good reason to be, came a new voice. Dr. Sarah Chen, the Admiral's daughter and the ship's newly appointed science officer, descended into engineering. Unlike most of the crew, she was young, never having served on an analog vessel, but her expertise in xenotechnology made her invaluable. The signal's not just data, she continued, pulling up hand-drawn charts. They'd learned quickly that digital tablets were unsafe. It's some kind of cascade effect. Every advanced AI system that processes it starts to degrade. The more sophisticated the technology, the faster it fails. Maria felt a chill despite the engine room's heat. And our old girl here? Completely immune, Sarah smiled. Can't hack what isn't digital. Can't corrupt what runs on steam and circuits. The Arcturians thought we were showing them a museum piece. What we're actually showing them is a survival strategy. Captain Reeves nodded slowly. How long until the signal source arrives? 3 days, Sarah replied. The Arcturian fleet is already showing signs of system degradation. Their neural networks are experiencing increasing errors. Soon their ships won't be able to function at all. Then we'd better get this old warhorse ready for battle, Maria said, turning back to the engines. Captain, with your permission, I'd like to try something. These engines were designed to run at 110% capacity in emergencies. The safety protocols were mechanical, not digital. You want to override them? Reeves asked, raising an eyebrow. Not override, sir. Optimize. The Arcturians think these systems are crude. What they don't understand is that we built in capabilities they never imagined. Redundancies, backup systems, manual overrides, all designed by humans who didn't trust computers to make every decision. Sarah's eyes widened as she understood. The Omega signal doesn't just destroy advanced technology. It forces everyone back to basics. And we're the only ones who remember how to operate at that level. Exactly, Maria grinned, her hands already moving to the control panels. Permission to show our alien friends what primitive technology can really do, Captain. Reeves smiled, the first real smile anyone had seen from him since taking command. Permission granted, Chief. Let's wake this old girl up properly. The next 12 hours were a symphony of mechanical resurrection. Under Maria's direction, systems that hadn't functioned in decades roared back to life. The hydraulic weapon loaders, the analog targeting systems, the manually controlled maneuvering thrusters, each piece of obsolete technology proved more reliable than its modern counterpart. From the observation deck, Admiral Chen watched alongside an increasingly agitated Reven as the Constitution's systems came online one by one. The ship's massive form began to pulse with power, its ancient engines generating an energy signature that made the Arcturian sensors fluctuate in confusion. Impossible, Reven whispered, his crystalline form flickering rapidly. Our calculations showed these systems could never achieve such output. Your calculations, Chen replied quietly, didn't account for human ingenuity, diplomat. We're not just reactivating a ship. We're remembering who we are, who we were before we let computers do our thinking for us. In the engine room, Maria felt the ship responding to her touch like an old friend awakening from a long slumber. The Constitution wasn't just a vessel. It was a testament to human engineering, a reminder that sometimes the path forward meant looking back. As the ancient warship's systems hummed with renewed power, its crew, old and young, experienced and learning, worked together to prepare for whatever the Omega signal would bring. They were no longer just reactivating a relic. They were rekindling humanity's forgotten strengths. And in 3 days, they would prove to the galaxy that sometimes the oldest solutions were the most powerful of all. Digital blind spot. The first sign that something was catastrophically wrong came when the Arcturian flagship simply stopped moving. Its crystalline form, usually pulsing with quantum energy, grew dark and still against the star-filled backdrop of space. One by one, the other alien vessels in the defense fleet began to falter, their sophisticated systems falling silent. Status report, Admiral Chen demanded, standing on the Constitution's bridge. Around her, officers worked at their stations, analog displays glowing softly, mechanical switches clicking, paper charts spread across tactical tables. Arcturian fleet showing massive system failures. Lieutenant Sarah Chen reported, peering through an old-style optical scanner. Their quantum cores are shutting down. Neural networks are going dark. They're dead in space. Admiral, Captain Reeves stood at the helm, his hands resting on the physical controls. All stations, report readiness. Engineering reports all systems nominal. Came Maria Santos's voice over the intercom. Running at 90% capacity, all backup systems standing by. Weapons control ready, reported Gunnery Chief Marcus Wong, his fingers dancing over manual targeting controls. All batteries charged and responsive. That's impossible. Reeven's crystalline form flickered erratically as he stared at the dead fleet through the bridge viewport. Our technology is generations ahead of yours. How are you still functioning? Before anyone could answer, space itself seemed to tear open. A rift appeared, not the clean, calculated quantum gates the Arcturians used, but something raw and primal. Through it emerged a shape that defied description, a vessel that seemed to be made of living mathematics. The signal source, Sarah whispered, her voice filled with awe and terror. It's here. The alien vessel, if it could be called that, pulsed with energy that made every digital system in range flicker and die. The few remaining functional screens on the Constitution's bridge went dark, but the ship's mechanical systems continued to operate flawlessly. Now we know why they fear it, Admiral Chen said quietly. It's not just a signal. It's an entity that feeds on advanced technology, breaks it down, absorbs it, and we're the only ones left who know how to fight without it. The mathematical entity began moving toward Earth, ignoring the dead Arcturian fleet. Streams of energy reached out from its impossible form, probing, searching. It's scanning us, Sarah reported, reading data from purely mechanical sensors. But it's confused. The energy patterns suggest it's trying to interface with our systems and finding nothing to latch onto. Captain Reeves allowed himself a grim smile. Can't hack steam and steel. Chief Santos, do we still have engine power? More than enough, Captain. These old turbines are singing like it's their first day out of space dock. Helm, bring us about, Reeves ordered. All hands to battle stations. Let's show this thing what human ingenuity looks like. The Constitution moved with surprising grace for a vessel its size, its ancient engines pushing it through space on a direct intercept course. The mathematical entity seemed to notice them for the first time, its probing tendrils of energy reaching toward the approaching warship. Energy surge, Sarah called out. It's trying to shut us down the same way it did the Arcturian fleet. But nothing happened. The Constitution's mechanical systems, immune to digital interference, continued to function perfectly. The entity's energy weapons, designed to corrupt and consume advanced technology, found no purchase against analog circuits and physical controls. Weapons range in 30 seconds, Wong reported from his station. Permission to show them what good old-fashioned kinetic weapons can do, Captain. Permission granted, Reeves nodded. Load the special packages engineering prepared. Maria's voice came over the intercom, filled with fierce pride. Projectiles loaded, sir. Each one's got a mechanical timer and a payload that'll give that mathematical monstrosity something to think about. The entity, perhaps sensing that its usual tactics weren't working, began to shift its form. The space around it warped and twisted as it prepared to bring more powerful weapons to bear. Not this time, Admiral Chen said firmly. Lieutenant Chen, calculate firing solution using the mechanical computers. Chief Wong, prepare to fire on my mark. The bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, using slide rules and physical calculators to plot their attack. There was no AI to optimize their targeting, no quantum computers to predict enemy movements. Just human minds, working with tools that had served them well for centuries. Solution plotted, Sarah announced. Targeting coordinates laid in. All batteries, fire as they bear, Chen commanded. The Constitution's ancient weapons roared to life, launching salvos of specially modified projectiles. Each one contained no electronics, no sophisticated guidance systems, just precisely calculated trajectories and mechanically timed detonators. The entity tried to defend itself, but its defenses were designed to counter quantum weapons and energy beams. against simple physical projectiles. Guided by nothing more complex than Newtonian physics, it found itself vulnerable. The first hits struck home, their payloads detonating in carefully planned sequences. The entity's mathematical form began to fluctuate, its perfect patterns disrupted by good old-fashioned explosives and shrapnel. Direct hits on multiple vectors, Wang reported, his voice tight with concentration. Entity showing signs of structural instability. Again, Chen ordered. All batteries, continuous fire, don't let up. As the Constitution pressed its attack, Revan watched in stunned silence. His people had feared this entity for generations, had built ever more sophisticated defenses against it, only to see them fail. And now, humans with their primitive technology were actually fighting back. The entity began to retreat, its perfect form increasingly disrupted by the Constitution's relentless barrage. Each hit seemed to confuse it more, as if it couldn't comprehend being damaged by something so simple, so ancient. "It's working," Sarah breathed, unable to keep the excitement from her voice. "Their defenses can't adapt to purely mechanical attacks. They've evolved so far beyond physical warfare that they've forgotten how to counter it." Admiral Chen nodded slowly, watching as humanity's oldest warship drove back a threat that had paralyzed the most advanced fleet in the galaxy. Sometimes, she reflected, progress meant remembering where you came from. Sometimes, survival meant keeping hold of the old ways, even as you reached for the new. The battle was far from over, but humanity had found its edge. Against an enemy that turned advanced technology against itself, humanity's primitive weapons had become their greatest strength. Thunder from the past. The mathematical entity retreated, its perfect form now scared and distorted by the Constitution's assault. But Admiral Chen knew better than to celebrate too early. Through the bridge viewport, she could see the dormant Arcturian fleet, their crystalline ships still dark and lifeless. "We've bought ourselves some time," she announced to the bridge crew. "But we need to do more than just drive it back. We need to find a way to defeat it permanently." "Admiral," Sarah Chen called from her station, "I'm detecting unusual energy patterns from the Arcturian vessels. They're not completely dead. There's still minimal power in their backup systems." Revan's crystalline form brightened slightly. "Our emergency protocols, designed to preserve core functions in case of catastrophic failure, but without our main quantum systems." "Then it's time we showed you another human specialty," Captain Reeves interjected. "Chief Santos, prepare for Operation Jumpstart." "Aye, Captain," Maria's voice crackled over the intercom. Rescue teams standing by with the mechanical power transfer units. The plan was audacious, bordering on insane. The Constitution would attempt to restart the Arcturian ships using purely mechanical means, essentially jump-starting their basic systems like ancient automobiles. It was a technique that hadn't been used in space for decades. "Helm, bring us alongside the Arcturian flagship," Reeves ordered. "Engineering teams, prepare for EVA operations." Maria Santos led the rescue operation herself, despite her age. Clad in mechanical pressure suits, no sophisticated life support systems to fail, she and her team crossed the void between ships carrying equipment that would have looked more at home in a 20th century garage than a space battle. "This is either brilliant or stupid," Sarah muttered, watching through the viewport as the engineering teams worked. "Maybe both. The hallmark of humanity's greatest achievements," Chen replied with a small smile. The rescue teams attached mechanical power transfer devices to specific points on the Arcturian vessel's hull, following instructions frantically supplied by Revan. The crystalline ship's emergency systems, designed to accept any form of energy in a crisis, began to respond to the raw mechanical power being pumped into them. "It's working," Revan exclaimed, his form pulsing with renewed energy. "The backup crystals are accepting the power transfer. Emergency systems are coming online." One by one, sections of the Arcturian flagship began to illuminate, not with their usual quantum-powered brilliance, but with a basic fundamental energy that was harder for the mathematical entity to corrupt. "Now for Phase 2, Chen announced. "Captain Reeves, Begin transmission of the modified operating protocols. Sarah had spent the last several hours working with Revan to develop a stripped-down version of the Arcturian ship's operating systems. Gone were the sophisticated AI controllers and quantum computation suites. In their place were basic command protocols, running on the most primitive crystalline circuits the ships possessed. Transmission complete, Sarah reported. Arcturian vessels are accepting the new protocols. They're waking up. The crystalline ships began to stir, their forms glowing with a subdued but steady light. They were operating at a fraction of their usual capability, but they were functional, and more importantly, they were now resistant to the entity's digital attacks. All ships showing positive response, Wong reported from Tactical. They're coming back online with minimal systems. Weapons are functional, but limited to basic energy projectors, which is exactly what we need, Chen said firmly. Revan, please inform your fleet captains of the new battle plan. The diplomat's form pulsed with understanding as he transmitted instructions to his awakening fleet. The Arcturian ships, once marvels of advanced technology, were now operating more like the Constitution, relying on basic principles and physical laws rather than sophisticated computations. The entity is returning, Sarah announced suddenly. Multiple spatial distortions detected. The mathematical construct emerged from its retreat, its form now altered, adapted. But it still wasn't prepared for what awaited it. All ships, battle formation Delta, Chen commanded. Constitution takes point. Arcturian vessels, form up on our flanks. Remember, no advanced systems, basic weapons only. The combined fleet moved with purpose, the Constitution leading the way. The ancient Earth warship's mechanical systems provided a template for the stripped-down Arcturian vessels to follow. What they lacked in technological sophistication, they made up for in coordinated determination. Entity is launching energy probes, Wong reported, still trying to find digital systems to corrupt. Let them try, Reeves replied grimly. All batteries, commence firing. Show them what happens when you cornered humanity. The Constitution's guns roared again, launching their specially designed projectiles. But this time, they were joined by focused energy beams from the Arcturian ships, simple, raw power rather than their usual quantum-based weapons. The entity reeled under the combined assault. Its defenses, designed to counter and corrupt advanced technology, struggled against the pure physical force of kinetic weapons and basic energy beams. For perhaps the first time in its existence, it faced opponents it couldn't simply shut down. Press the advantage, Chen ordered. All ships, maintain fire. Don't let it adapt. The battle raged across the void, a testament to the strength of simplicity over complexity. Human ingenuity had not only found a way to fight back, but had shown their advanced allies that sometimes the old ways were the best ways. The entity's perfect mathematical form began to fragment under the sustained assault. Its attempts to analyze and counter their attacks failed because there was nothing to analyze, just physical laws and basic principles, wielded by determined crews. We're actually winning, Revan whispered, his crystalline form bright with astonishment. With technology we considered obsolete centuries ago. Not obsolete, Chen corrected him. Just forgotten. Sometimes the path forward lies in remembering where you came from. As the battle reached its crescendo, the combined fleet pressed their advantage, proving that in the face of overwhelming technological superiority, humanity's greatest strength lay in remembering their roots and teaching others to do the same. Victory in vintage. The void of space lit up with a display that defied conventional warfare. The mathematical entity, once seemingly invincible, was being torn apart by the combined assault of humanity's oldest warship and a fleet of advanced alien vessels running on their most basic systems. Entity showing critical structural failures, Sarah Chen reported from her station, her voice steady despite the tension. Its computational matrix is destabilizing. Whatever it is, it's never encountered this kind of resistance before. Admiral Chen watched through the Constitution's viewport as their strange alliance pressed the attack. The Arcturian ships, stripped of their quantum systems, moved with an almost primitive grace alongside the Earth vessel. Their energy weapons, reduced to their most basic principles, complemented the Constitution's kinetic arsenal perfectly. Multiple ruptures detected in the entity's form, Wong called out. It's losing cohesion. The mathematical construct writhed in space, its perfect patterns dissolving under the relentless barrage of physical and simple energy weapons. For all its advanced nature, it had evolved so far beyond basic warfare that it had no defense against it. This is the moment, Chen announced. All ships, execute final attack pattern. Chief Santos, give us everything those engines have left. Aye, Admiral. Maria's voice came through the intercom, accompanied by the deep thrumming of the Constitution's engines pushing beyond their rated capacity. The old girl's got one last run in her. The combined fleet move as one, executing a battle plan that would have been considered archaic by modern standards. No complex AI-driven tactics, no quantum-calculated trajectories, just pure human intuition combined with basic physics. The entity tried to adapt, tried to generate new defenses, but it was too late. Its very nature, built on consuming and corrupting advanced technology, had become its greatest weakness. It couldn't process, couldn't comprehend the simple brutality of the assault it faced. All ships, fire at will. Chen commanded. Everything you've got. The Constitution's batteries unleashed their final barrage, joined by concentrated energy beams from the Arcturian fleet. The entity's form began to collapse in on itself, its mathematical perfection shattered by weapons it had evolved far beyond. Energy spike. Sarah shouted. It's... The entity exploded in a burst of pure mathematical energy, its complex form finally torn apart by the combined might of the most basic weapons humanity and the Arcturians could muster. The shockwave rolled over the fleet, but their simplified systems held firm. As the light faded, silence fell over the Constitution's bridge. The threat that had terrorized advanced civilizations for generations had been defeated not by superior technology, but by remembering the foundations that technology was built upon. All ships reporting minimal damage, Wong announced. The Arcturian fleet is stable, maintaining basic operations. Revan's crystalline form pulsed with what could only be described as humility. Admiral Chen, he said softly, I believe we owe humanity an apology, and perhaps a debt of gratitude. Chen turned to face the Arcturian diplomat. No apology needed, Revan, but perhaps we can offer you something more valuable, a lesson. In the days that followed, the Constitution's engineering teams worked alongside Arcturian technicians, teaching them the value of mechanical backups and basic systems. The aliens who had pushed so far forward that they'd forgotten their technological roots began to understand the importance of maintaining connections to simpler, more reliable methods. It's not about going backwards, Maria explained to a group of fascinated Arcturian engineers as she showed them how to maintain mechanical backup systems. It's about remembering where you came from and keeping those foundations strong. The Arcturian fleet began incorporating mechanical systems into their ships, creating hybrid vessels that combined the best of both worlds, advanced technology backed by reliable analog systems. It was a revolution in reverse, a recognition that progress didn't always mean abandoning the past. 1 month after the battle, Admiral Chen stood once again in the lunar observation dock, watching as the Constitution underwent repairs. But this time, she wasn't alone. Representatives from dozens of advanced civilizations had come to Earth, eager to learn what they called the human way. They're calling it the Great Remembering, Sarah said, joining her mother at the viewport. Advanced species across the galaxy are rediscovering their technological roots, all because we kept one old warship operational. Chen smiled, watching as teams of human and alien engineers worked together on the Constitution's hull. Sometimes the greatest innovation is remembering what worked before. We didn't just save Earth. We reminded the galaxy that progress isn't always about moving forward. Sometimes it's about maintaining a balance between the old and the new. The Arcturians are proposing a joint fleet, Captain Reeves added, approaching with a stack of actual paper documents. Ships combining their crystal technology with our mechanical systems. They want the Constitution to be the flagship. Of course they do, Chen chuckled. Because now they understand what we never forgot, that the strongest foundation is one that remembers its roots. The Constitution floated proudly in its dock, its ancient hull bearing new scars alongside old ones. It had become more than just a warship. It was a symbol of humanity's greatest strength, the ability to bridge the gap between past and future, to find power in simplicity, and to teach others that sometimes the oldest solutions were still the best ones. As the stars wheeled overhead, humanity had not only survived, but had changed the course of galactic civilization. Not through superior technology or advanced weapons, but by remembering the foundations that all progress was built upon. In doing so, they had earned something far more valuable than victory. They had earned respect. And in the depths of space, other civilizations began to look back at their own forgotten technologies, their abandoned mechanical systems, and started to remember what they had left behind in their race toward the future. The age of pure digital advancement was over. The era of balanced progress had begun. All because humanity had kept one old warship, crewed by people who remembered how to fight with nothing but steel, steam, and determination.